Poke the Bear is brought to you by PrizePicks.
And welcome into Poke the Bear episode 364, part of the CLNS Media Network. If you have time, please subscribe to our Bruins Ringside YouTube channel. We have pretty much daily content between Poke the Bear, Bruins Beat with Evan Marinofski, Pucks with Haggs. We have you covered every step of the way this Bruins season. So follow along with us over at YouTube. And if you don't like YouTube, you don't want to see my face, you can subscribe and follow along over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else you get your hockey podcasts. This episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks, the best way to win cash this football season. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. My name is Conor Ryan. Once again, we are joined by the esteemed, the ever knowledgeable, the star, they say, of the hockey show on 95 The Sports Hub, Ty Anderson. What's going on?
What is happening, man? How's it going today?
Doing well, Ty. Hockey is in full swing, along with seemingly everything else in Boston sports. The Red Sox are in the playoffs. The Patriots stink, but they're playing. Celtics got media day right around the corner. It's a busy time of the year, but dare I say also the most fun time of the year. It's hectic, but 4 teams playing at once, or 4 teams in the zeitgeist going right now. It's a blast. And thank Christ the Red Sox are in the playoffs.
I mean, October and April are like the two. I think personally the two best months of the sports year, because you have either the playoffs starting in baseball and then the NBA and the NHL starting in October, and football is getting like real. September is always like a weird month for football, in my opinion. Like bad teams could be good and good teams could be bad.
The games aren't that like everyone's like still in training camp essentially.
Right. And then, April, it's the inverse. You have the playoffs beginning for the other ones, and then baseball is starting up again. And then you have the NFL draft. So like
March Madness.
The Frozen Four. Right now you get the Ryder Cup, which like I got no idea how that works, but sure, people like it. I don't know what's going on there, but that's all right. But yeah, no, it's a great time.
I believe it's at Pirates Cove this year. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, hell yeah.
Parking's gonna be crazy. I think people are double parking over the Pancake Man, and like it's a big shit show. Like you can't even get in and get your French toast, which the game's the game, but
yeah, tough like the Masters menu, but better.
Exactly.
Like,
that's true.
That's all it is.
People are saying. Ty, we do have some hockey to talk about. We've got 2 preseason games in the books. We got a third one that we're recording this on Saturday morning. So we won't have anything from that. But you look at that roster, it's a lot of like either pretty established guys, some of the fourth line guys, or guys that seem to be on the fringes that aren't the Lysells and the, trying to think of other guys like Patra, those types of players. So
Minton,
Minton, right? So we won't be talking about that game. We'll have plenty to talk about that next week. But in terms of other stuff, tangible news to talk about, I think it's good to start off with Zdeno Chara officially being back with the Bruins. Gets the official title of Hockey Operations Advisor and Mentor. Spoke a little bit on Friday about it. Says he's excited to, both help the current roster, be kind of that liaison between the players and the coaching staff. Also help with development of younger players as well. Work with guys like David Pastrnak and Charlie McAvoy as that next leadership group. And I think it's... You look at what Chara has obviously done across his career, and this is usually when like you have like an established legend of a sport come back to a team. There's usually like that skepticism, right? Of like, all right, what fake role is this, right? Like, what is this person doing that they're just posted up? They're in like the luxury suites. They get their swag. They get a nice little quarter zip. They're happy with the team, but how much do you really take away with it, right? Like listen,
Tuca. That's Tuca.
Yeah. Like Tuca's like, essentially, what do you say? Like after he got that job, he's like, I'm just there to like shake hands at the golf course.
Yeah, basically, which is what he's done. Like that. Yes. That is what he's done. He stayed true to that. He has no interest in being in hockey ops.
Right.
So
there's that. Like like David Ortiz, I think has like a technical title with the Red Sox, but like I think his title is just be David Ortiz and show up every once in a while, which like. There's more than the right to do. Like he can do whatever the hell he wants. Like that's usually what a lot of these jobs given out to these legends are. But I do think you look at Chara's body of work, and also just the fact that guy throws himself into anything he wants to do. Right? He's like, I'm just going to become a marathoner, and he's now like running 4 marathons a week casually. He's doing triathlons. I was talking to Evan about this. I'm like, if Zdeno Chara was like, I'm gonna be an astronaut, dude would be like orbiting Neptune in like by December,
He
right?
would,
So like,
yeah.
so I do think this is encouraging both for the Bruins. I think it's a good fit for Chara, and it's exactly the kind of guy I think you want to have. And even if it's a pretty broad role, they could use his help in all those different categories as they kind of go through this next chapter of the franchise.
Yeah, I think with Chara, like coming into the organization, like this was always going to be his path, right? Like the Bruins, I think when he retired, outright said like, when he wants a job, we'll figure it out, right? And
Yeah.
sure enough, it took about 6 months, but they figured it out. This is what his role is going to be. This is how he's going to work with the team. I like the role. I like it. I think it's a good idea. You know, I think it's interesting, like hearing that he's going to be a bridge between the players and the coaching staff. Like, does that speak to kind of the missteps that they feel they may have made in the past, you know, with Jim Montgomery or Joe Sacco or Bruce Cassidy, whoever it is, right? That like you didn't have strong enough communication there, and you want another party who is, you know, younger, like Marco Sturm, like, but is not the head coach, right? And is not an assistant coach, but can be like that guy that you go to when you're having a hard time, or you got to know how to tackle this situation or that situation. Like I know that there are times when the organization has tried to ask other players on the team to give a helping hand to a younger player, and they can do that, sure, but like, do they have the same cachet or resume as Zdeno Chara? No, they don't, right? Like few do, right? And so to have that as another sounding board, another, you know, another person to talk to lean on, like I think it's huge for them, right? And they clearly love that core and that era, and rightfully so. It's the most success they've had in the modern era. Probably should have had another cup or two to go with it, but you know, be that as it may, like you loved the culture you had during that era, right? And to bring in somebody that's not a knock on Adam McQuaid or Chris Kelly, but to bring in the captain of that era, I think just carries a bit more weight, right? And this is the start of what could be I think a lengthy career for Chara in this realm. I think, you know, to your point, like he can do anything he wants. You know, like I love the story about how he was injured, and during the 3 weeks that he was out, this is when he was playing for the Bruins. During the 3 weeks or whatever that he was out, he got his real estate license because he just wanted to. Like he is one of these guys that I just feel like, you know, can do anything they want to do. And if he wants to be a team president, I think he'll be a team president. If he wants to be a GM, I think he'll be a GM. Like he feels like that kind of guy, you know, for this organization, if he wants to be that guy. And, you know, you mentioned like Tuca and his role and what Chara's could be. Like I go back to when they brought Neely in. They brought Neely in as a vice president. His job the first 3 years was basically being a figurehead. It was basically being like a, you know, look at him in the press box cheering like a fan, you
Here's
know,
Cam. Yeah.
yeah, like, and then it became, oh, he's the team president. Like, oh no, he has a lot to say. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of the trajectory that Chara is on. Now, is he going to be the team president? I don't know, but I think he could be. But like, I think it really comes back to how involved he wants to be, right? And he is somebody, to your point, he doesn't half-ass anything. And so I'm just curious, like what his aspirations are, you know, say 2 years from now. What are they, right? And that's something I'm dying to know, and we're gonna see it obviously play out in real time. But like, given that resume you're talking about, and given that what he's done in his career, like this is a really intriguing hire, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's almost like Chara's like, you know, some people are on like a plane and they like brush up on like a different language as like a hobby, like go on like Duolingo. Like Chara
Yeah,
like builds like Rosetta Stone. He like built the
exactly.
software for it. Like he just had free time. He learned coding on like
Yeah.
a flight back to Slovakia. But no, like I feel like he's gonna be such a great resource in terms of like as much as there are like some familiar faces on this team, right? The McAvoys, the Pasternaks, the even like Marco Sturm, who's been here before. Like you still got a lot of guys that are in uncharted territory, right? Like
Mhm.
we all know that like Pasternak and McAvoy are like the de facto leaders, but still, there's a lot on your plate going into a year. We saw how much like I think it was not a burden, but there was a clear weight that I think Brad Marchand felt, right, taking on that role. You know, it's one thing to just be around a lot, to learn from guys like Bergeron and Chara when they were playing here. And it's another thing to like actually have the C on your sweater and have to be that guy and navigate the ups and downs. And there's a lot more downs than ups last year for Brad Marchand. So it's going to be, I think, like a learning process for both McAvoy and Pasternak. So to have a guy in Chara who has that presence and that weight, but also a guy that like they've played with before, right? He's like a familiar face. It's not like they're just bringing in, some, like they said, like Cam Neely wasn't a part of this franchise, came back. Like everyone knows Cam, but like it's not like a teammate of yours. And I think even like to have Marco Sturm, like his former teammate, a guy that he obviously reveres quite a bit, to have him be like a resource to like talk to the players and to have that line of communication. And I think it just makes it easier for everyone to get settled into what these rules are going to be when you have such a. I almost feel like the biggest thing with Chara, whether it's his presence on the ice, off the ice, is just like steadying, right? That's like all he's been. He's been like a foundation of this team ever since he first signed here. So I think having that resource is going to help out a lot of guys. Like even if it's, Sturm has mentioned that his focus is being a guy that's very open, direct communicator, and I think that is a strength of his. But once you get into the season and like some guys are getting frustrated, or like all this stuff happens to every coach, right? It's the ups and downs of an 82-game season. Having Chara as to help you out as well, to be like, hey, this guy's feeling this way, or maybe you change the approach like that. That can only help the Bruins over a stretch here where if you're looking at this roster and there's just so much uncertainty, even like now 2 weeks into or a week and a half into the preseason, still don't know really what to make of this roster. And I don't think the team really knows yet. It's trial and error. Having someone like Chara, who I think can, observe, help out this team, both on the NHL roster, the coaching staff, and even as they start bringing in younger players, having like Zdeno Chara being one of the guys you meet early on helps you out. It's like the same thing as like during Dev Camp when these guys are all wide-eyed coming in here, and you got Brad Marchand working out like a psycho next to you. Like, oh shit, this is how it is here. Like, it can only help having a guy like Chara in those facilities again.
Yeah, and I also think like the other part of it too here is that Chara's first year here was 06-07. What you saw a year ago was very reminiscent of 06-07, in my opinion. Just not a great team, a lot of trades, a lot of young players. And then 07-08 is when they got back to being competitive, and they snuck into the playoffs as the 8 seed. They pushed the number 1 seed to a 7-game series. There's a lot that Marco and Zdeno can call back to, with especially the roster complexion, right? Like, you go back to 07-08, like Chara was second year as the captain, really learning how to establish his voice, his presence, all of that. Bergeron was a young leader. And you had younger players emerging that 07-08 year. You had Krejci. You had Chuck Kobasu, who was a younger guy emerging. You had Vladimir Sobotka. You were a younger team back then, right? And so you can remember some of those challenges that you had while having a mix of established players and younger players, and how to bring them together to get back to being a competitive team. And I think that is that's probably, I would say, most valuable about Sturm and about Chara, is that they themselves went through where the Bruins are right now as players, and they went through it early, right? And so you hope that brings them some value, and it allows them to be more patient and to be more hands-on, because they lived that and they saw it firsthand. I thought it was great. Like we were at practice the other day, and you asked Sturm about Freddie Brunet, and he immediately, Sturm did, compared it to a player that he had, Angus Booth, in Ontario. And it's like he's already doing that in his head of like, oh, this guy reminds me of this guy, and this is what I did to make that player get better or to further him along. Like, he's already drawn comparisons, right? That he's going to need, I think, to make some of these players, kind of progress and further along and accelerate their development. And just having Chara back there, I think, is another. It's just like, if I can have somebody teach guys how to play defense, like I'm happy that
guy.
It's Zdeno Chara, right? If Nick Lidstrom's unavailable, all right, and Niedermayer's unavailable, all right, give me Big Z. What I'm dying to know is the conversations potentially between Chara and Nikita Zadorov, right? And if you go back to Chara's 06-07, ton of penalties. And, he was fighting, he was trying to set the tone, and he eventually became like a much more like steadying kind of defenseman.
Yeah.
Not to say that Zadorov wasn't steady last year. A plus 25 on a team with like a minus 60 is good. I don't care what you think about plus minus. Like that's a good number.
That's a wacky stat. Yeah.
It's so weird.
You don't ignor that.
Right. But if he can get him to be like a steadying, kind of presence, as well as what Nikita said about Sturm and comparing him to Daryl Sutter, like you might get a good defenseman out of Nikita Zadorov there. Not that he's not a good defenseman now, but like, can you elevate him by having Chara be in his ear and tell him how to best utilize his frame, his mentality, all of that. And so it's value add across the board. Bring in a guy like Chara. It's just, I wonder what the aspirations are. I wonder does he want to be a GM? Like I've always felt personally that the natural succession plan for the Boston Bruins is probably Bergeron and Chara taking over for Cam and Don whenever they want to do it. And now we're seeing Chara take that first step. And so we'll see what happens next now. But it absolutely, I always say the Tony Stark of hockey, he can do he can do everything basically. And so we'll see what happens here.
And I even think like my last point on Chara is just like, as much as you look at just how many different responsibilities he'd have, like even like being involved with the development staff, I think is huge too, because it's, sometimes these like elite superstar players, Hall of Famers get into these spots, and it's like, how much can you really impart when it's like Wayne Gretzky? Be like, just do what I did. Like, okay, I can't really do that. Or like, Pedro Martinez like helps out with some of like the kids in like the Dominican Republic, right? Like usually a lot of the international free agents, and like you can get some pointers from them. You're not throwing like Pedro Martinez. Right. I do think that like Don Sweeney made a good point the first day of training camp talking about Chara's like legacy is that like he was always as big as he was, but he like made himself into an elite franchise defenseman. Like it wasn't like he just had those tools and it took him a year or two. Like he worked his ass off to become what he was. Like he wasn't just like a top 10 pick. It wasn't like a Kill McCarr where you see him in college and you're like, this guy's going to be a star. Like he worked to get to that point. So I think whether it's a guy at the NHL level like Zadorov or Mason Lohrei, like these guys, or even just that next wave of guys, I have to imagine the Bruins are probably going to be bringing in a right shot D in the draft pretty soon, right? Like I do think having a guy like Chara who molded his game into what it was that, made him a first ballot Hall of Famer can also help this team. I feel like we're just waxing poetic, but if there's ever a guy to bring into the team in terms of needing to check off all these boxes for what this team has to do to reestablish themselves, like Chara's the guy for what those roles are.
Yeah, and like in your point and Don's point is bang on about that. Like he was with the Islanders as like, kind of a goon out of the gate. Like he was and not to say that he was always that guy, but like he had to be that guy to stick in the NHL. And Craig Berube was a guy that took him under his wing. And another great guy that clearly that you'd want to learn from, right, is Craig Berube. Granted, it was as a player, not as a coach, but another tough customer who knows the game in and out, right? And so I think that I like that, like that point about like they're gonna have to draft another defenseman soon. Like this is a good first step, and this is not too dissimilar from Don Sweeney's first foray into his post-playing career. When Don Sweeney first joined the Bruins, he joined them as like a player development kind of guy.
He was like McQuaid, right?
Yeah, he was running the camps at back then it was Rastusha for Dev Camp. He was running that, and he was a player personnel guy, and that's what he did, and became the AGM, and then became the GM. Like so it is similar in that regard, and so we'll see what happens there. But I think that where they are right now, they need all the leadership they can get, right? And I'm curious how it plays a factor with McAvoy and Pasternak, and allowing them to find their voices as leaders and even secondary leaders, because you need some of those to emerge as well. Like they go out and they bring in all these veterans in the offseason because they don't have those guys. Well, Chara was very good with the younger players, and he was very good with making them feel heard, right? And so you got to have some of those younger voices emerge here, both as players and as potential, leadership types. Like a Fraser Minton is a guy I look at, like the people I talked to in Toronto are like, oh, great kid. And I was like, really? They're like, oh, he's so hardworking. He's like a young player that like other young players will look up to. And I'm like, cool.
Gets it.
Yeah. So like, I want to see that. Like, and I want to see that voice be, empowered and allowed to speak up. And, guys like Chara will help players like that find their voices despite their age.
Yeah, without a doubt. We'll talk more about Fraser Minton and some of the other younger players. Before we do that, let's take a quick break. Hear from our friends over at PrizePicks. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. There's plenty of new faces in New England, but it looks like names such as Milton Williams, Harold Landry, and maybe Afton Chisholm are going to be major players this fall. We'll see. And if you want to make your pick on which player is about to go off on the gridiron, you have to go with PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you can cash in. PrizePicks puts the members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. PrizePicks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. PrizePicks also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And it's not just football. On PrizePicks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports. Combine your favorite football players with players from baseball, basketball, hockey, esports, and much more. There's no shortage of ways to participate in PrizePicks. This week, I'm looking at the board. I'm going to cover all my bases. I've got Trevor Story for more than 1 home run during October baseball. And I'm banking on Travion Henderson to break out. I'm taking the Rook for more than 0.5 touchdowns going into week 4 against the Panthers. This week, there's also a special max discount promotion live on the board right now. Jalen Hurts has been discounted to only needing to go for one passing yard during the Eagles versus Buccaneers game this Sunday. Please just add another player to your lineup and your picks hit if you can cash in. One passing yard. I would do that. Now, let me tell you, I'm not an expert here. Jalen Hurts 1 passing yard. I'm feeling pretty good about that. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS on the PrizePicks app to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Ty, looking at the state of the Bruins going into a 3rd preseason game, a little bit over a week now into training camp. And it sure feels like we've already kind of split these 2 groups into the NHL squad and the you guys are going on to Providence squad. There could still be some changes here and there, but with Providence's camp opening on Monday, I believe, sure feels like we're going to get roster cuts pretty soon. Maybe it's Sunday, maybe it's Monday morning. But a lot of guys in that Group B, right, the group that it was pretty telling that for the last 2 practices during Group B session that it wasn't even Marco Sturm coaching. It was Ryan Mujanel. I'm like, all right, well, this about sums it up. So some of the guys that have been in that group are guys on the bubble. You got Johnny Beecher, who had a rough game on Tuesday against New York. You have Fabian Lysell, Danis Lashmelis, some of these other players. Are you surprised that it's already kind of you've already had this pretty clean split, especially with guys like Lysell, Merkulov, some of these players that going into camp, you wanted to see maybe a little bit more of them, or you wanted to see maybe them for 4 or 5 preseason games, but it feels like there's already going to be that fracture between these 2 groups.
Yeah, I mean, working backwards here, I mean, I want your opinion on this too. I feel like the Bruins are done with Merkulov. I feel like they believe that he is what he is at this point, right?
Yeah,
like
I agree.
It just feels like he got 4 games or whatever it was last year. He got 1 game with Joe Sacco, basically. They put him on the top power play, and then they sent him right back down. We didn't see him again, I don't believe. Or maybe he did a couple more times. Last year was a blur, dude, and it was a bad blur, and I don't want to relive it. So it feels like they just think he's like a quad A kind of player, you know? And so
I agree.
I was shocked that he re-signed here. I really was. I was like, he's staying? Sure, okay. Lysell, I mean, listen, like, there are people in the organization that are not big fans of him. For whatever reason, they are not big fans of him. And so he was a player who I thought had to begin training camp with production. He didn't. And so, you know, and as the preseason goes along here, the games will get more veteran heavy. And that makes it harder. I thought it was really telling that they get the overtime power play in New York on Tuesday. They keep the first unit out there the entire time. No Lysell. Didn't even get a look at him on the power play in overtime, a 4-on-3. You know, a situation that you would think would seemingly be built for him. They did not put him out there once. And so that kind of tells you something there, right? He was a guy that I thought needed immediate production, didn't get it. And when you pencil in Victor Arvidsson for a top 6 role right out of training camp, and you say David Pastrnak obviously is the top line right wing, all right, well, where's he playing then? And if he's not going to produce, and you got guys like Fraser Minton who are producing right now, and you got Matt Poitras getting a chance there on the wing, like it's going to be harder for a guy like Lysell to stick. Beecher, I mean,
the game was rough on Tuesday.
You got to be quicker. You got to be quicker with your thinking. He gets the puck right inside his own blue line, and he holds on to it. You're a fourth liner,
right with Gavrikov right there. I was like, oh no.
But like
not a guy you want to skate into.
No. But you got to be like, you're a fourth liner who your game is predicated on your defensive know-how and your speed. The thinking's got to be quicker there. It's got to be quicker in that moment, and it's not. And he had a bad year a year ago. He took a lot of penalties late in the year, I thought. And again, that hurts you as of someone who's a defensive specialist, right? And a PK specialist. You can't be in the box and be a PK specialist. And then when they signed Corrali, I mean, Corrali still has wheels, and he's a better face-off guy. I mean, that kind of the writing's on the wall.
He's an elevated Johnny Beecher. That's what I thought. Right. Like when Johnny Beecher first got up here, I thought that's what he could turn into, of like a 6'3", really strong skating centerman who's going to win faceoffs, and like just off of playing to his strengths could be like a 18 to 25 point guy, kind of like what Corrali was in his prime, and just it hasn't manifested that way.
And so, like, it's not surprising. It's just like, I just wonder, like, I know Beecher's on the roster for Saturday's game against Philadelphia. Do we see Lysell again? Doesn't feel like we're gonna, but but this is the challenging part for these younger players. And listen, I make no bones about it. Like, I want to see Fabian Lysell do well, because I do think his skill set, the speed, the pain in the ass that he can be at times with his speed and with his, his kind of swagger at times, I think it could be value add for the Boston Bruins. But I also have to acknowledge that he had to start off camp with production, and he didn't really do that. And so that's a problem when it's a first-time head coach and you got to make that first impression. And so that part of it is frustrating, right? But it just feels like what you're seeing right now with Group A and Group B, like the roster feels borderline set right now for the Bruins when it comes to the NHL roster. But I do want to pick your brain about Fraser Minton. If they move Casey Middlestat down to the third line wing, where does Minton play? Like that's what I wonder. Like because if you look at the game that he had on Tuesday, I don't know if he had a point, but man, did he stuff that box score. If you look at the box score, it was like
three blocks,
5 shot attempts, 3 of which landed on net. I think he went just under 50% of the faceoff dot, but like, if you look at the event summary, he's got something in every box.
Yeah, in the first preseason game, I think he was 6-7 on faceoff. So I think for like the preseason, he's like maybe like 54% or something. It's like 12 of 19 or something. I'm sure that math is horrifically wrong, but he's on the winning side of it. But no, he's been productive for what his spot is. Again, you want some production, but man, he's checking off every single box of what you want, especially if like you're trying to find like a way to incorporate younger guys into the team. Putting Minton at 3C and just letting him cook and going with the ups and downs. If there's a year to do it, it's probably now, but it just feels like there's so much up in the air with this roster construction where I think you can like map out the different like scenarios. And I don't think there's one roster configuration that you look at and you're like, all right, this team actually could surprise some people, but like there's ways you can see like the pros and cons of all of it. Like if you want to put Zacha and Middlestat both down the middle, I could get that. Like if you're trying to make Zacha to be like a 3C shutdown guy, and you want to put Middlestat in a spot where you can really put him with like some productive players, whether it's, Arvidsson and Blumel or just like some shot ready guys, and then you can get 50 points out of Middlestat. I get that. But also I could see like if this is a year to really lean into the younger players, put, Zacha, Middlestat, Arvidsson together and make that 3C Minton, Jeannot on the left, and then take your pick, right? Blumel or Poitras or something like that. Maybe that make that third line more of a younger kind of group, but it does feel like it. And it comes down to like what we've said before of like, I think Marco Sturm wants to incorporate younger guys into the team. I think it's promising that like, he said that he's liked what he's seen from Husendinov. They're clearly giving like Blumel, who's not really a prospect, but young enough, right? Like it feels like they're clearly like, we think we might have something with this guy, so we're going to lean into it, which I find promising, right? Like you need to find these kind of other conduits of 5-on-5 scoring. So I'm glad they seem like they're really committed to that. But also as a coach, you have to weigh like, all right, I know the long-term health of this team involves maybe some of the growing pains of putting Minton in a 3C spot and maybe like putting Poitras with him or, Blumel in a top 6 role. But also as a coach, you want to start off strong. And so there's also that appeal of like, well, how about we stabilize the lines with Zaka and Middlestead each driving play, right? So it does feel like it's a group and like a lineup that like I don't think whoever it gets settled before October 8th in Washington, there's not going to be a lineup you're going to look at and be like, this is the group. I'm liking this group. Like there's still going to be a lot of question marks however they want to spin it. But where the Bruins, line of thinking is right now still seems like to be determined as to which way they're going to lean there because I think if you're Marco Sturm, especially and you're a first year head coach, you can look at it in a variety of different ways as to what you're trying to look out of this group.
Yeah. And I think there are recent examples of them going younger and it working out and then going younger and it not working out. I think 2017-18, they begin opening night with Anders Bjork and Jake DeBrusk and Charlie McAvoy. And, they all produce in opening night. They win against Nashville and they have a great game. All three of them did. And then you go to the following season, they open the year with Ryan Donato and Forsbacka Karlsson, and they end up trading Donato and they end up demoting Forsbacka Karlsson, and they go out and they acquire Coyle and Johansson because those guys weren't doing enough for them. And so I think that there are two ways of looking at it. They can go really well or it can go poorly. And so, that's obvious. That's anything, right? But it does come back to your point, though. This team has to squeeze something out for the long term. Like, let's break it down simply. If the Bruins have it their way, who is here for a longer duration of time? Casey Middlestad or Fraser Minton? It's Fraser Minton. Like that's who they hope is here longer and long term. And so you got to put that guy in a position to succeed and to stick with the roster long term. And so you hope you do, right? And you got to, again, you have to put him in positions to succeed. And if he's going to stuff the box score like that, then I find it, it's incumbent on the Bruins to give him the a 20 game sample. Let's see what happens here. The expectations for this team have never been lower. They're just not, like, you ask around town, they think they're a playoff team, but you ask around town and people are not high on this team. I don't think they're going to be a bottom 5 team in the league again, but I do acknowledge that it's going to be hard for them to score goals. So given that, like, give a guy 10 games, 15 games, I just, you got to break out of the cycle, Connor, of just giving guys 5 games, and if not, they get buried to hell forever. Like, that's not going to work for anybody. It's just not. And so you do hope that they break out of that. And this year, you have all the reason to break out of it. You just do. Like, internally, you might think you're a playoff team, but externally, the expectations are very low. Use that to your advantage. Give some younger players some rope and just see what happens here. And real quick on Blumel, because you brought him up, where do you think his shot ranks on the team right now? Like, just like potency, power. It's already top 4.
He was zipping it around during the power play. Like, I know like he scored that goal, but I think like it's more impressive. Like, even like the first game where the Bruins didn't do much, like he was, I think, surprised me in terms of how strong of a skater he was. Like, he looked like a guy that could actually be like a transition threat. And then like he's got that like heavy wrist shot that, like, I mean, Pasta, geeky, Zaka when he wants to shoot because he's got a cannon when he launches it, but
and then probably
Blumel. Yeah,
like, probably. Yeah. Like, but like that's sort of, I think, I heard you and Evan talking about it, like he's a lock for the team. And it's like, yeah, because you don't have another shot like that in your pipeline. No one else has that kind of shot, and you need that because of what we've talked about, them being offensively starved. And so I also like that he's a dual threat in the sense that he can play left or right wing.
Yeah.
So and he likes being on his right side for the one-timer on the power play, as you clearly saw on Tuesday night. But he
the Draisaitl shot, as Marco Sturm calls it.
Yes, he is meticulous though when it comes to analyzing his. It's the baseballification of the NHL, but the launch angle, the angle of what you're shooting, like how to get the most power behind it. Like, he's very into that. He's very into analyzing that, and so if that can make him an incredible shot from that slot, then I want that on my team. I just do. I feel like you need that on your team. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how that transpires. But I would like it if you had 3 younger forwards on your night one lineup. I just don't know if your current roster construct allows that to happen because of Middlestad, because of the term you've committed elsewhere on the roster. You're not going to sign a guy to a 2-year deal and then waive him out of training camp, nor should you, given the way that Isamon played on Tuesday night. And it's a 5-year commitment for Tanner Jeannot with the full no move. He's here for at least 2 years, in my opinion. So
Right.
it does limit how many guys you can carry, but I do want to see one of these younger guys break through. You got to have it, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, without a doubt. We'll talk a little bit more about this training camp. Before we do, again, want to say please subscribe to our Bruins Ringside YouTube channel. We have daily content, which we poke the bear. Bruins beat with Evan Marinofski, who's still at Fenway partying at Bleacher Bar. Pucks with Haggs. We have covered every step of the way this Bruins season. And it's not just the Bruins on the CLNS Media Network. Please subscribe to our channels. Patriots All Access, Celtics Press Pass. I think I messed that up. I believe it's Celtics All Access and Patriots Press Pass. Both of them have both of them have an insane amount of content. The crew over there has you covered every step of the way, especially with the Celtics ramping up. And even during the offseason, the crew over there had pretty much daily content out there. So if you want to get all the latest updates on the Celtics, Patriots, even the Red Sox, Bobby Manning, who does everything for CLNS, has been at Fenway seemingly every single time I've been there. He's been posting an insane amount of content. So shout out Bobby, shout out the CLNS Media Network. Please subscribe to all the channels over there. Ty, looking at training camp and where we are right now, and to your point about the young guys getting some looks here, what's kind of been your biggest surprise, either good or bad, about what you've seen from this group so far? And I feel like that's kind of can be a bit of a tough question because it does feel like there still is so much up in the air. But has anything kind of changed your opinion, your approach of what you're seeing out of this team, or what's kind of been your one thing going into the year that has maybe changed over the last week or so?
Yeah, I don't know if anything's necessarily changed because we still have another 4
Like
games to
still
go.
I still don't know what to make of this team.
Right,
So, I mean,
yeah.
that's how I feel.
Like, I do wonder about just how aggressive they're gonna be in terms of getting more offense out of the back end. I thought Jordan Harris, um, was really aggressive,
I like this game.
on Tuesday. I think he's your 7th D right now, and, but clearly, like, if we're talking, like, we've spent podcasts all summer and even today, like, talking about how they're gonna have to find ways to score more goals. The back end didn't produce enough a year ago. It actually had the fewest amount of points out of any back end in the NHL last year. I think only San Jose. I think they were tied with San Jose or Calgary for like the fewest points from defensemen. So like you got to get that on the uptick here. And it's one of the things that I thought Sturm did a good job of in Ontario is developing offensive minded defensemen for the LA Kings. And so you hope that you can unleash more of that. But I thought that a guy like Jordan Harris, like you look at the second Isamon goal, he activates and really just takes away a lane for the Ranger defenseman. They turn it over, boom, feeds it to Isamon, and he scores a goal. Like that's aggressive. If you go and watch that shift, that's an aggressive pinch by Harris. And so part of that may be the player versus coaching, but that's how they're gonna have to squeeze offense out of this. I mean, Zadorov. I mean, you got the full Zadorov experience in overtime too, where he almost gives the game away. But then he activates the other way, gets in all alone, scores a goal, and does a walk off. Like it was Manny Ramirez walk off. Just undoing the gloves while he's walking off. Walking down to first base. But like that is probably like their internal cheat code to get more offense. It's just getting your defenseman more involved, and there's risk in that, of course. But I do want to see how aggressive they choose to be because I don't think we got the aggressive version of Jay Leach a year ago. I thought it was very pack it in, stay at home. Yeah. And so, Sturm has talked about guys not being too risky, but I saw a pretty risky group on Tuesday night, honestly. So I'm curious where it goes from here.
Yeah. And I would say probably my, not like surprise, but one thing that I'm at least encouraged to see has been like, again, every training camp, every preseason, you've got like the principles and the mandates that a coach wants to see out of his group to help address a deficiency, right? How many times do we go into the a season under Bruce Cassidy where he mentions like generating more offense from the blue line, and it's like, yeah, like respectfully, no shit. But then like you it still felt like an arduous process. I think it's clear that like Sturm has been pretty candid and transparent about this team is going to have to really work to get its 5-on-5 offense beyond the top line. We know that. So what has been like the equalizer or the focus has been a lot of got to get the power play going. Like we have to get that into, not saying we're going from 29th overall to top 5. We don't probably not doing that, but hey, if we get it to 16th in the NHL and the margins are so narrow and Swayman bounces back, that's our formula for what we need to do. We're going to figure out along the way of maybe a guy like Blumel or Middlestat or someone can step up and maybe surprise us with more 5-on-5 than we expected. But the template we need to follow is getting the power play up and running. And I think you saw on Friday, Bruins started practice early, and it was literally just Steve Spott running like a 20-minute power play session. And a lot of it was like not just work in the ozone, it was them as like a group of 5 coming up the ice. And it wasn't like there weren't any drop passes to David Pastrnak. It's like completely kind of reworking their breakouts, their entries, which is probably the thing that probably plagued them the most is like, half the issue with the power play wasn't even just like the inability to get a shot off or like the predictability and all that stuff. It wasn't great, but half of it was like you'd get one look, one and done, and then half of the time on your power play, the 2 minutes, you're back in your own end trying to get through across the neutral zone again. So I think them clearly making that a priority, devoting a lot of time and practice to it, and then even like just what they're doing in the ozone where David Pastrnak, they've mentioned they want him to be kind of more of a rover, right? Like you can't have him just be the guy waiting at the left circle. He's operating up high. He's operating down low. He's drawing guys away. And I think, not to draw a parallel because it's a tough comparison, but when the Bruins were in their heyday with that top 5 power play and you had Bergeron in the bumper and Torrey Krug working up high, and yeah, you had David Pastrnak, and a lot of plays ended with him getting that one-timer off, but it's because that group is so unpredictable. You could have Marchand going wherever he was, have him switching off up high with Torrey Krug. Like that group is so unpredictable that you got 4 guys on the PK out there. You can only do so much that sooner or later you're going to stretch out enough that seam pass to Pastrnak is going to be there. All right, you're probably not going to have that luxury now with David Pastrnak, but having him move around and creating more unpredictability, I think that's encouraging to see. So I think it's good that the Bruins are clearly seeing that the power play is an area that, like, unlike getting really strong production out of the middle 6, which you hope you can have, but that's probably asking a lot. You have the personnel to make your power play go from 29th to middle of the pack, and that's what they have to do. And it's good that I think they're really honing in on that. So I've been encouraged by what I've seen from that so far. And we'll see once we get into the later stages of the preseason once that top unit is out there, especially, see if they can do a little bit more damage because sure feels like you can only go up from where they were last year.
Yeah, and to your point as well, like just kind of watching at practice and, players at the point where they kind of dick around and they're just having fun out there. Victor Arvidsson is really good at tipping pucks. I did not realize how good he was at that. They're just messing around. He is just getting all. I swear, I was watching. I was like tracking at one point, and he was like 8 of 11 on tipping it home. Like, and I think the biggest thing is like to get to what you're talking about, right? To have that unpredictability and that dangerous kind of level of like your power play production and the options you have presented. You can't be so one and done like you were a year ago, right? And this is where you hope a guy like Arvidsson, who can win plays, extend plays, win pucks behind the net, front of the net, whatever it is, you hope that value is there, right? Because they have really, in my opinion, missed that since they let Jake DeBrusk go. Like they never replaced that quality, right? Like
No.
Coyle wasn't great at it. Brazeau was almost too big for it, as weird as that. Like he couldn't get in there without risking taking a penalty, basically, just given his size. And so, like, you got to have somebody who can do that for you, right? And Arvidsson, the veteran savvy, not huge, but good enough at getting in there to kind of win battles. Like, we talked about before, but he had 23 points in the power play in LA a couple of years ago. Like, if you can get him back to that level, it completely changes the dynamic of your power play. And so he's a huge factor in all of that as well. Right. Like there's always that delicate balance there between like, you're good at the net front, but you're not blocking your own shots necessarily. Like
Right.
Nick Ritchie kind of had a habit of like blocking like the shot, and you're like,
no,
that's
Nick.
a goal. That's a goal if he's not in the way, like, and so like you got to have that balance. And I feel like Arvidsson is a guy that may fly under the radar, in terms of being able to provide that balance and provide that extra power play pop. And boy, you hope he can, because 15 goals and 27 points a year ago in Edmonton.
Not great.
Not great, right? And you're locking this guy into a top 6 role. So you really hope that the power play can kind of juice his numbers up a little bit here, because, if that's your best option on line 2, you might be in some trouble there.
Yeah, not what you're looking for. So we'll see what happens going into this third preseason game on Saturday, and obviously a lot more next week back over at TD Garden. We will both be there for that. So, Ty, before we let you go, where can we read your stuff? Where can we hear you on the airwaves? Little Birdie told me you're on 98.5 The Sports Hub on Saturday. So where can we hear you? Where can we read your stuff?
Yeah, so the hockey show is back. Today we did a season preview show. I was by myself, but next week the gang will be all there. Myself, Ryan Johnston, Bob Beers. We will be covering the Boston Bruins with you, the callers, everyone else, from now until when the season is over, every Saturday. So that's going to be fun. You know what? I would love that. I would love if we're doing this in June. I have some mild hope that we'll be doing it into late April. I don't know, man. Like I have not been at camp every day. I was in Chicago for the start of training camp, so I can't speak to the practices. I just feel like there's a natural elevation that is going to happen from just getting Hampus Lindholm back, getting Charlie McAvoy back. I can't imagine that their goaltending is an 885 again as a team, like it was a year ago. This was the worst goaltending they've had in 20 years, right? Actually, maybe even 30 years, honestly.
Right.
It's just so many things happened last year where we were covering games, and we would look at each other and go, oh my God, this is the first time this has happened in 35 years. This is the first time they've done this since 2010 when they lost 11 games in a row. This is the first time this has happened since in the modern era. Like, so many things went wrong last year, right? But let's keep in mind that they were still only 6 points out of a playoff spot on March 29th.
Yes.
Almost a full month.
Not the trade deadline.
Right.
Yeah.
Almost a full month after trading half the freaking roster, they were still in it. People underestimate how bad you have to be non-competitive. I think this team will be competitive. I do. I'm not trying to be like wear my Bruins pajamas and get my foam claws on and like, they're going to be good. But like, I'm telling you, like, they're not going to be bottom 5. I just have a hard time seeing that. The NHL is probably the hardest league to like outright tank in. You have to do it by design. Like, I'm talking, you got to give $8 million to Tanner Jeannot, and you're like, actually, you're going to be playing defenses here, Tanner. Like, it's just hard to do. Like, and so I think they'll be competitive so long as they're healthy. It's just a weird feeling that I have about this team right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like every time I'm over at like Celtic stuff or Patriots stuff, or over at Fenway, people are asking me like, "Oh, what the team's gonna be? They're not gonna be that good this year." I'm like, check in with me in a few more weeks to see what I think, because I still don't know what to make of this team, but they can only go up from here. So we will see. It's got a lot more of training camp to go, a lot more preseason to go. We'll have you covered every step of the way. Ty, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely,
again,
dude.
For anyone who's following along here, again, please subscribe to our Bruins Ringside YouTube channel. Daily content, Poke the Bear, Bruins Beat, Pucks with Haggs, have you covered every step of the way. And again, this episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks, the best way to win cash this football season. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Also, if you want to read my stuff over on Boston.com and the Boston Globe, please do that. We have you covered every step of the way this Bruins season. If you want to follow me on Twitter, X, whatever it's called, you can at Conor Ryan _93. Again, this is episode 364 of Poke the Bear. You fans have a great rest of your week.